Today we are covering Season 7, Episode 19. It isn't the main thing about you. This is the episode in which Rarity's main gets destroyed. So, that's it. That's the episode. And this is why you can do stories within the Empire and have them still be interesting. You know, as opposed to needing there to be an end-of-the-world destructo threat of doom. Right in the beginning, there's a bit where Apple Bloom is talking to Burnt Oak in the background. And if you noticed, Grandpa Pear, or Grandpear, or whatever it's supposed to be called, is actually in the booth with Granny Smith as they're selling apples. I just thought that was a kind of a cool little thing. And I'll be bringing that up later as well. Don't forget about it. So even in Ponyville, it turns out Rarity's a trendsetter. I mean, you know, that makes sense. I think it's just you, von Falkenstein. See, what it is Germany is clearly a backwards country. That's why they lower the Twitch sub rate for Germany. It's because they're just so... So apparently, so she's a trendsetter. Main color coordination with flowers. And color consultation. Yeah, apparently she's just kind of a business consultant at this point. But, I mean, that does make sense. A, she's probably the most business-savvy... I was going to say pony, but at this point I'm just going to say character in the whole series, or in the whole setting so far. So her actually having good business ideas, I mean, ignoring the fact that she has 3 good ones right off the bat. Like, you know, should color consultation for flowers. Sure, cool, that makes sense. And color coordination is important, obviously, for both aesthetics and practical application. They also really show off the main animation during the intro. Did you catch that? It's a long teaser, but it's just... It's the mane, and then it's dangling over the chair, and then it's blowing in the wind, and then she pulls it out from the hug, and just all sorts of random animation tidbits there. Anyway, so then we get to the fan seller, who is apparently a moron, because his big goal for selling fans is to just have a bunch of fans going. He did come up with the idea, I think. But then that leads to the Sofa Cellar. This one actually got a smile out of me, because she's like, well, why not just make different colors for the sofas? Yes, please, God. Thank you, Diminash. I will put that towards Wasteland 3. Thank you, as always. What I mean by that, I don't know how many of you have ever gone furniture shopping in general, but there's a plague. I can't type and talk at the same time. Hang on. There we go. There's a plague. The waste plague is what I just wrote down. There's a plague when it comes to sofas and chairs especially, but this applies to furniture in general. And that is the plague of the bleh. You can quote me on that. Everything's gray, or like dark gray, or light gray, or brown, or dark brown, or light brown. Right? I'm sure, yeah, everything is freaking just, it's either brown, or it's on the grayscale, and that's it! Now, there are exceptions, but to give you an example... One of the most recent times this came up for me was practically, I wanted a chair that was just straight up green. This was back when I actually had the green screen. And it doesn't freaking exist, or at least not in any manner that I could procure it. There's no such thing as just getting a green chair, apparently. And that's not exactly the first time I've had that problem, because, you know, I've actually been to Nebraska Furniture Mart, for example, which is a great place to shop for furniture, except for the fact that everything there is brown or gray, right? So can I get that in a red, like a really sharp red? No. How about purple? No. We've got like a brownish purple, which I forget what that color is, but you know what I mean. Okay. Yeah, like a really dark auburn kind of almost wine colored. Can I get red? No. Okay. That's cool. Again, this is not a new problem. This goes back here. It's related to several other problems. You see this coat I'm wearing? I actually have tried several times to get this coat in white, because that's my whole color motif, right? Is black and white. It doesn't exist. You can get black, brown, or gray. You can get ties in every color of the rainbow. Moving on. So I'm with Rarity on this. More color. More color. Yeah, no demand. Which, I could be wrong about this, but I think that's one of those self-fulfilling prophecies. In other words, I think that there's no demand because nobody does it, so nobody's aware of it, so everyone just buys what they have, and everyone gets, brown and gray, right? I don't know if that's true. I do know I'm not the only person who has that opinion, ignoring the fact that S.A. Ross just pointed that out in chat. When I mentioned the Nebraska Furniture Mart trip, well, let's just say usually when I'm going furniture shopping, it's for other people who want some actual goddamn color in their houses. But still, that's a small sample size. That's like 20 people tops, so who knows? Anyways, what do you want to bet they came up with the term sneeze-aversary and just worked backwards from there for the initial gag with Pinkie Pie? It's been... I actually looked it up. Could you believe it's been effectively 2 seasons since we saw Zecora? The last time we saw Zecora was in the cutie remark. Think about that. I'm just weirded out by it. It's nice to see her again. I like Zecora. And funnily enough, we will see her next episode, I'm pretty sure. So, woo. But, it's okay, sure, whatever. I love the fact that Rarity is more upset at being seen by the spooky eyes than she is afraid of the spooky eyes. Like, her whole attitude is, I know I look terrible, but screw you, as opposed to, oh god, there's evil eyes staring at me from the... it's just amusing. You can kind of tell that they're sort of beyond any fear of the Everfree Forest at this point in time. I wonder how long the Rube Goldberg machine that Zecora used to make her bottles took to animate. It was nice to see the Cake Twins, too, as well. Who still haven't grown any. I know. I'm the only person who wants to kill my animators by forcing them to make new animations for new templates for ponies to slowly grow older as time goes on. I still want that. I would still absolutely push for that if I was in charge of the show, but I can just imagine my animators, like, oh god, kill me every time that, I say that. So, Zecora's awesome. She's cool. I like her. She's got a good actress. Everything's cool. Why would she put 2 very different magical substances right next to each other that look completely identical and not label them? I know. It's critical to the whole point of the episode. I get that. But come on, Zecora. Use a little bit of decorum. Yeah, no, there's a little bit of cloud effect. If we actually sit back and analyze, the premise for this episode is really stupid. It requires at least 3 separate, very stupid things to happen in succession to get us to the premise, to get us to the point, which is Rarity's main is screwed up. And it really felt like they had the episode, and then they're like, okay, how do we get Rarity's main screwed up? And I can just picture the writer's room as they're all like, how do we make this happen? Okay. What if... No, that'll never work. Like, I don't know how many of you have ever been in a writer's circle, or a writing team where more than one people sit around trying to hash out try to break a story, is the term for that. I have several times in my life, and I've witnessed several other times as well. And it tends to go like this sometimes. Everyone's just like, we all agree this is a good idea. How do we get to that point? Oh, let's see. Anyways. So, they have a magic cleaner which focuses what you're cleaning on. That actually struck me for a second. Some of you may not know this because you're probably not a janitor like I have been, and you probably don't geek out about things like cleaning like I do. But that's incredibly useful if you think about it. Because, no, I do not, Darth Medora. Breaking a story is a term. At least I'm pretty sure. Now you gotta make me Google it. Hang on. Break a story. Yep, nope. Figuring out the screenplay's blueprint. Yep, nope. It's in screenwriting.io. But yeah, it's a targeted cleaner, exactly. Something that only cleans one specific thing based on what you're mentally thinking of. That is incredible. It also solves most of the problems that exist with cleaning, because there's actually like 15, but there's 2 really big issues when it comes to cleaning. The first is while you're cleaning, you have a problem where you're usually getting rid of some of the stuff you're cleaning, right? Stop apologizing. Like, for example, a road is actually one of the easiest examples of this. If you ever see a street sweeper clean off the asphalt of a street, of a road, it's minor, but they're pulling off chunks of that road while they're cleaning it, right? A more mundane home example is, let's say you spill some paint or whatever on the wall, and you get some cleaner up there. Well, unless you have a specific setup of paint, you're probably going to be pulling some of the wall's actual paint away as you're cleaning it out, right? Just stuff like that. So, a targeted thing is useful for that reason, but the second reason is sometimes you want to clean something that's complex, something that has an unusual shape or is made of multiple different parts, and you just want to clean that thing. I'm just saying that is an incredible invention, so much so that I am straight up stealing that for the extant. I'm just going to admit that right now. Targeted cleaners are now a thing in canon within the extant. So, this then leads to, oh, I know, incredibly concentrated. This then leads to the mega shampoo. That's true, Loner. You're absolutely right. Because there are some things that are much harder to clean than other things, like super sticky string, for example. Or bubblegum is a common one. Blood is absolutely nightmares to clean. I actually have some blood on my shirt here. I'm not going to show you it, because I'd have to basically pull my shirt off to do it. That stain is never going away, because it's a blood stain. Yeah, we're not going to talk about that, S7E19. In fact, we're never going to talk about that again. So then she all right, Mr. Red, here you go. So she gets rid of her mane because she's focusing on her mane, because she's cleaning her mane. Yeah. I've actually had hair that bad before. In fact, I've had hair that bad on camera, debatably. Some of you may or may not remember the Final Fantasy Marathon, the very first one, back when I was starting streaming, where I had a poll up for my viewers. Should I shave my head all the way down or let it grow out a little bit? The poll was literally split to the number, exactly even. So I shaved half my head. It looked really dumb. I shouldn't have done that. But, yeah. Poor Rarity. Now, so she goes out and she becomes Fluttershy. No, really. Because she absolutely is sapped of all of her confidence, which is the main intended Aesop of the episode. And she lets other people cut in front of her in line, which has actually happened to Fluttershy. And she lets other people misidentify her and just completely ignore her because she doesn't have the confidence to actually speak up for herself. Even the way that she talks is different during this portion of the episode, which again, credit, because the actress is absolutely amazing. But yeah, she basically emulates Fluttershy's pattern of speech during this too. Again, that's not a dig. That makes perfect sense, since one of Fluttershy's main problems is lack of confidence. We know with total certainty that Fluttershy can do significant feats when she's pushed to. She has done so many times. Right? And of course, she's got to have the cloak and hood. Very important. Very important. This is a fascinating topic which the episode doesn't cover. I haven't decided how much I want to cover this topic. People treat you differently when you're more or less attractive. That's not presumption, that is fact. She also mentions, yeah, no kidding, S7E19. She also says a line, which I wrote down word for word. People treat you differently when you can't command their attention. That's also generally a fact. Not a universal fact, but most attractive people tend to automatically command the attention of those around them. Basically dominating the conversation is what that's usually called. A thing where, you know, they'll guide the situation, or they'll take over, or they'll talk over someone, or maybe they'll allow the thing to progress, or maybe they'll just connect with people more, or whatever. And yeah, Rarity has been both attractive and commanding for the entirety of her life. It's basically her shtick. So she's suddenly absent that. I love to compare Star Trek to these episodes, so allow me to point out that this is Troy losing her empathic powers in TNG, but better. And I want to really put that into focus for a second. Someone who has telepathic powers suddenly losing them is done worse than a pony losing her mane. Even though it is effectively the same story beat in both cases. As I've said before, I look forward to rewriting Troy, specifically, in the Trek rewrite. Anyways. It is an interesting topic, though. I've said this before, we automatically gravitate towards attractive people. It's a natural thing. I don't even mean that in a sex way, as weird as that may sound. There are obviously sexual elements of that with regards to the natural instinct to breed and blah, blah, blah. But what I mean by that is a human being will naturally automatically look towards something that sounds good, or looks good, or smells good, or tastes good. Whatever sense is engaged in a positive matter, we will be more positively inclined towards it. Duh, right? You can see how that can be misused. You probably are personally familiar with it being abused, but you can also see how it does naturally change how we act around people. Yeah, exactly. This is why food aesthetics are a thing. Some of you may or may not be aware of ugly cooking. I don't know if that's the official term, and I don't care. I've heard it called that several times. Ugly cooking is when you make food and you just don't care. It just looks like a mash of gunk, right? But it tastes really good because a lot of care and effort was put into it. And so it tastes awesome and it's really healthy, or both. But it looks like gugh. And so someone looking at that, especially a child, is going to be like, oh, I don't want to eat that gugh. And there's so much psychology that goes into this with regards to food, with regards to music. Just, oh my gosh. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a whole lot, and I don't want to go completely off the rails since I already spent like 40 minutes talking about the X-Stand earlier today. So, all I'm going to say is that the episode does very briefly showcase both sides of this. The people who are attracted to, in this case, the people who gravitate towards Rarity, and the person who is attractive, in this case, Rarity. Someone who is used to, as she herself puts it, commanding attention. You'll notice, again, that I'm not saying this in a negative light. Obviously, it is possible to misuse such power as it is possible to misuse basically any power. If you have a pair of scissors, you can misuse that power. My point is that Rarity has been using her power for good, and the episode shows this multiple times before we even get to the point where she loses her mane. I mean, what was she doing for those flower ponies? Just helping out. Just helping them with their business and helping the customers get what they wanted. What was she doing with the fan dude? What was she doing with the couch dude, right? Anyways, so this then leads to... Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't mention that. Zecora mentions that main magic can be tricky. I'm going to come back to that in just a second. Literally a second, because the next thing I want to talk about really quick is Rarity is like, can you believe that my main looks like this? And she pulls back the thing, and she's dramatically posturing. But what I love is in the background you can see her magic, like the little magic aura thing, grabbing the lamp and pulling it forwards just so she can highlight it. Just look at how full I am. That is so wonderfully Rarity. I love that. Because so then they're like, okay, we have to use magic to use this. This is when they mention specifically it has to come from somewhere. This is the concept of equivalent exchange, which is something that is actually a true thing in real life, but also very, very common in most settings with magic. Anybody familiar with Full Metal Alchemist is probably familiar with the most famous example of it, but this is an extremely common concept. You can't make from nothing, right? You make from something. There is a cost involved. What that cost is can vary. As anybody who's watched Full Metal Alchemist can tell you, sometimes that cost can be an idea. But you get the idea, right? So they cannot make a main from nothing. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say that this is not perfectly canon, or canon's the wrong word, not perfectly continuity, because there are plenty of times in the show where they have effectively made from nothing magically. However, there are also plenty of other examples of where they have done exactly this. They have followed this basic concept. I decided to write down only one example of that. There's an episode way back in Season 1. It's the sleepover episode with Applejack and Rarity, where they talked about how they couldn't... They needed to make a storm happen because they missed a day of rain. Now, I know that's a strange example to bring up, but the point is that level of balance had to be maintained. They couldn't just magically make everything fine despite having mixed something. They needed to maintain the balance, right? So they had to make up for the balance, so they had to make a storm. So you can see how even their level of control over the weather and the environment still follows the rules of equivalent exchange. That being said, the next thing that happens is both Twilight and Starlight use their powers combined. Captain Planet shows up, along with a gigantic amount of hair. Now, in this exact scene, they just talked about equivalent exchange, and in this scene, they show twice where the extra mains are coming from. One from the dude outside and one from the door. Where's all this hair coming from? Shop. There's a lot of really horrible answers to this question. that's all I'm going to say to that, because they never actually cover it. So, they then say, hey, we should go back in time. I love how both Twilight and Starlight, both of whom have separate and, individual experience with time travel, are like, so her three friends decide to help her in their own ways. And first thing we see is Sugar Belle hanging out with Big Mac. Remember that. I'm going to bring up a third example, because there's another one later. But that's 3 examples now. That's kind of what I'm thinking, Trihex. There's probably a whole town out there where there's just, tons and tons of people are suddenly missing their mains, and it's like... Anywho... AJ comes up with actually a pretty good idea. How many of you have ever worn or seen a hat wig? I don't know what the proper term is. It's a hat that effectively has a wig built into it. So you put the hat on and then, it looks like you're wearing a hat over your hair. It's actually a legitimately good idea because for those of you not aware, actual wigs are a colossal pain to do properly. You don't just smack a hat. You've got to have the net underneath to make sure it stays static, and then you've got to make sure to put it on, and sometimes you have to actually use double-sided tape because those things will slide right off. And then you've got to actually style the wig while it's on your head, while making sure it doesn't move, which it's very easy for it to do, and it's just this colossal pain, and it's sticky, and it's hot, and it's itchy. I don't like wigs, by the way. Doing the hat thing is a much better thing, at least depending on how it's designed. Obviously, you can design it improperly and just have a hat on a wig, in which case you'd have all of the problems and none of the benefits, but you get the idea. So that didn't work out. Okay, next option. Well, next thing they try is the cloud outfit, or the cloud mane. Cloud wig? That's kind of a cool idea. Obviously, it doesn't work for Rarity because Rarity's not a Pegasi. What if she was? I find myself wondering, wouldn't it make sense that Pegasi can do this? I mean, Rainbow Dash styles the cloud. It would make sense that the cloud would stay on a Pegasi, specifically because Pegasi can interact with clouds magically, as we've previously established many times. And this got me wondering if, like, cloud mains or cloud clothes are just a thing for Pegasi, at least some Pegasi. Maybe have like just an accoutrement or whatever when it comes to cloud styling. I don't know, just food for thought. Either way, this then leads to that woodpecker messing up the bush wig. That woodpecker's a menace. It shows up like 4 times in the episode. This then leads to an extremely good point. The episode barely even makes it. The second time the episode has brought up a great topic and barely addressed it. If anyone can turn lemonade into lemons, it's her. Well, I guess it's harder for her when she feels like the lemon. Yes. How many of you, either yourself or someone you know, have ever had a situation where, there's the person X, and person X, we'll call them Bob, can't deal with something. However, person Y, we'll call them Bobette, comes by and says, hey, can you help me deal with something? And it's the same situation, or the same type of situation, and Bob has no problem giving good advice to Bobette about their situation. There's probably a proper term for this kind of psychology, which I can't think of right now. I'm really tired right now, forgive me. 12-hour days. But yeah, because this is an extremely common psychological concept, because you are not the focus, because you don't have the emotional investment that is actually inflicting and removing your ability to think properly, it is so much easier to look at something from an external perspective, see variables the person doesn't, and say, oh, blah. This is true when it comes to puzzles. How many of you have ever been working on a puzzle, either a video game or like a physical puzzle, and you're just... Someone else shows up and says, oh, do that thing. And you're like, oh, why didn't I see that? It's because the way our brains are wired is we tend to get stuck into 30 go to 10 patterns. We focus on something, and that thing becomes the thing that we care about, right? Whether it becomes to, this is how this puzzle should be solved, or this is how this should be written, or this is how this should be built, or this is how it should be made, or this is how I should talk to this person, or this is what I should do about my girlfriend, or whatever, right? We get stuck in that mentality, and a third person is not currently stuck in that mentality. So they can give you the outside perspective, which can help break that loop, and you're like, oh, okay. And there's other reasons this works, too. They might have access to different information, they don't have the emotional connection, blah, 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 blah. But the point is, this is an extremely common thing. It's one of the reasons why, even if I was the absolute dictator, I would want to have a council of people who are checking and balancing me regularly, being like, hey, Lore, you didn't think about such and such. Oh, you're right, I didn't, because it's a very common thing. This is also why I like to write in a group and not just by myself, why I usually bounce writing ideas off of other people to see what they think. So, and of course, I bring this up because this is an incredibly important aspect of being alive, of being a human being. And it's such a huge topic that you could do an entire episode devoted entirely to this topic. They don't. In fact, they kind of have in the past with the thing about Applejack and how she has this ridiculous pattern of action with regards to the farm. You remember that episode? Half of a good episode. Anyways, they bring up that moment and then they just immediately drop it. And the next thing we see is Rarity, and I counted 16 pints of ice cream. That is a lot of ice cream. That made my stomach hurt a little bit. This is when the... Very, very on topic for Rarity. This is when the intended Aesop, we're up to 3 now, but this is where the intended Aesop pops up. Confidence. I already brought this up, you know, the way she interacted, the way she talked about people. I actually can relate to this personally, by the way. How many of you feel confident, but only under certain circumstances? Maybe if the other person can't physically see you, like you're on a phone. Or maybe if they don't know who you are, so there's a distance thing, like you're typing on the internet. Or maybe, I'll use an example. This is not obviously from me, but I do know this example. I know several women who, at certain parts of their life in their month, don't feel particularly confident because of how they feel at that particular point. I'll go ahead and share my example. Every now and again, I feel severely bloated. Now, that's actually related to an abnormal disorder in my abs, which I have discovered I'm actually going to need surgery to fix. So that's great. But when I feel specifically bloated, all my confidence just goes completely out of the window. Like I feel like I'm trying to hide as much as I can, and I can't be myself when I'm around other people, right? Confidence. By the way, Punk Rarity looks really cool. So, this is when she hits the 3 points again and really nails this whole attitude confidence thing. Because, you know, she's got the punk look, which looks awesome. But it is entirely her attitude, which is the focus. The way that she approaches the situation and says, well, why don't you do this, this, and this? And this is, I already brought this up earlier, the other thing people gravitate towards. People who are commanding, people who are confident in their presentation. I was going to name names here. I've decided not to. How many of you can think of someone who you would consider to be not physically attractive, but because of the way they hold themselves, you know, they hold themselves well, they're still someone you tend to pay attention to. They're someone you don't mind looking at or mind interacting with because, well, because their confidence, I hate to keep using that word, is such that they are able to command attention despite not having the other aspect of the equation. And I can name several examples of that. I don't know who that is. Imperial Star Destroyer, I'm sorry. To Google! To private Google, I don't want this person in my search history. Oh no, I'm ugly as sin, Lord Harriman. But I wouldn't say I have confidence. I don't know who this person is. Apparently they are a music person. That doesn't actually help me at all, but sure. Got it. They do the musics. Then we have a Dragon Age 2 joke. There's just a fade to black and it's months later. Now, the final point I want to make, I've been bringing up something throughout this episode periodically. Photo finish is mentioned as being involved in this episode. In fact, arguably photo finish is the ticking clock of the episode, to use the narrative term. And the reason I bring that up is because photo finish has no lines of dialogue in this episode. So there's photo finish, Grandpa Pear, and Sugar Bell. And all of that, I think I'm missing one. But the point is, there's these are the three big ones. All three of them have no dialogue. Oh, Apple Bloom. And Burnt Oak. That's it, Burnt Oak. All of these characters have no dialogue whatsoever. And yet their mere presence adds something to feeling like this is actually a town, you know, the place where people interact. And all of these count, speaking of which, we're counting all of these as continuity counters. Every single one of these counts as a continuity counter. I'm just making this point yet again, and I'll probably never stop making this point. Hello? There we go. That one of the best benefits, one of the biggest things that is so useful when making an animated show versus a live-action show, is you can just have those characters there. You can just have them be part of the story, and have them be part of the background, and adding to the enjoyment of the story, hence the continuity counters, without having to tap the actor. Without having to put René Auberjonois in makeup so he can stand in the background. To use another Star Trek example, let's go with something a little less severe. Some of you are probably aware of the fact that Denise Crosby decided to leave Star Trek The Next Generation relatively early on. And the main reason for that is because she felt like it was a do-nothing, go-nowhere job. She was not being allowed to act, and the show itself wasn't exactly all that great in Season 1. For all intents and purposes, she made the correct choice, with what she knew at the time. There's a what if for you. But the reason I bring that up is because Denise Crosby was being a background extra. She was told to get up and stand behind the table and just be there, and be part of the background. Now, that is an enjoyable thing. As I talked about during my TNG run, they went out of their way to make sure they had the same extras for the same posts for much of the show, and that does add to it. But the point is, that's still a human being who has to get up and go and stand in the background for several hours a day and do effectively nothing because you're not animated. If it was animation, well, boop. Yeah, Data, Brent Spiner, and René Auberjonois, and Michael Dorn are the three really big ones here. Because it doesn't take a small amount of time, back then at least, to do the Klingon makeup, the Data makeup, and the Odo makeup. And they had to do full makeup calls, which, for those of you not remembering, in that particular era was close to 3 to 6 hours before they actually shot. Then they just wander around in those outfits for however many hours while they're shooting, feeling miserable and uncomfortable. Then hours getting out of makeup afterwards. Yeah. You get my point. Don't mistake me, there's certainly a place for live-action television. But the older I get and the more I think about it, if I'm ever to make shows, within the extant, of course, the more I think about it, the more I think I would do only animated shows for that. Because the overwhelming majority of my species would require makeup calls, would require prosthetics and all that kind of stuff. And I would absolutely do a thing where there would be regular recurring characters in the background, just like in this very episode. You know, Grandpa Pear back with Granny Smith. That's continuity, that's world building, that's awesome. I would absolutely do that, and I would feel so bad. Being like, alright, Von Falkenstein, alright, so I need you to come in as the Entethan again. For those of you not aware, Entethan are plant people, to summarize. Yeah, we're going to need you to come in at about 3 in the morning. Oh, no, you don't have any lines for the scene, but I think the scene could really be added by you standing in the background and kind of gesturing as if you're talking to Darth Madoro's character. Oh, speaking of which, Darth Madoro, I'm going to need you to come in at 3 in the morning to do a makeup call so you could play the character that... I would feel so terrible doing that to people. Or I could just animate it. Boop. Anyways. Yeah, there's a lot of scenes where Morn is another great example. Morn and Quark, both. I mean, I do think that kind of stuff adds to shows. I stand by that firmly. Even in TNG and DS9, they absolutely did that kind of thing. How many of you know Ensign Knight? Or McKnight, excuse me, I always forget that. I brought her up during the TNG Ruminations. Oh, fine. I guess if I have to, I'll do a side-up episode where you actually do stuff. Sigh. Let's rate this episode, shall we? So as I pointed out earlier, Josh Haber, who wrote this, has a insane track record. I think he has more reds than anyone else. He doesn't have more purples. That's still the purview of Mr. Larson, and honestly, I don't think that's ever changing. I can't imagine there's going to be enough purples to unseat Larson from our author in Season 8, Season 9. Nevertheless, Josh Haber has done some blah episodes. You remember Leap of Faith? That was Haber. And Simple Ways? That was Haber. But what do you think? I'm seeing several reds. So the way this works, Von Falkenstein, for fun, I've been keeping track. If you type in !MLP into chat, you'll get a link to the spreadsheet. No, this is not a purple episode, not by any measure. I do think bare minimum this is orange. I think this is definitely an above average episode. But the way it works is there's blue for Drek, green for below average, yellow is average, orange is above average, red is great, purple is amazing. And that's the color. And we've been kind of reviewing the episodes as we go. And it's been fascinating to see which authors do which, what, and where. And I kind of plan to map out which seasons have which colors and so forth and so on when we get to the end of it. Because I always like to do a finale thing for each show we cover, you know? I'm also going to do another thing, which is on the set left there. Don't mind that. But anyways, so I'm hearing another orange. I'm hearing a few reds. It sounds like we're debating between orange and red. Like I said, I do think orange is the floor for this episode. Personally. I admit I can't think of any substantial flaws to the episode other than the premise, I suppose, which so that's fair. That's fair. I should acknowledge that they really do stumble through some stupidity to get to the premise. There are some good character moments. There's some good continuity. There's a decent Aesop. There's two unintentionally decent Aesops in the background. Yeah, some good comedy bits. The episode actually made me laugh several times. And we get Punk Rarity. That's true. We do get Punk Rarity. And she's never seen again. Negative to story. I wonder if she does show up again. Don't answer. Because if she does, it's an 8 or 9. And I haven't seen that. That'll be interesting. Just like Trek. Yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards red, I have to admit. I think this is a legitimately great episode. I think I'm going to commit. Let's do it. When the worst part about your episode is that you have to get coffee out of a nebula, that's not too bad. Yeah, the Haber red streak continues, admittedly. Good lord. The next episode, what are we? So next we're covering A Health of Information. Let me go ahead and update this for episode 20. Health of Information. So let me chop out the local recording first.